Good afternoon, Coach Andy Noyes from Sunshine Endurance. It's Thursday, June 21st, 2018. This week, Western States 100. I'm out doing a walk before the Soul to Soul Adventure Run, listening to a cycling podcast called Bespoke from the BBC, and they're talking about racing tactics. And it applies to running. Myself, I started running in 1979 when I was 16, and I started running for a lot of different reason than most of you out there who came into the sport later in life. I was playing all the other sports and got tired of sitting on the bench, and then I looked around and thought, well, what sports can I get out on the field and not have to please a coach? And it was swimming and running. I was good at both, but I didn't have the resources to really become a swimmer, and running was free. So my sophomore year, quit baseball team, middle of the season, went out for track, and broke 5 minutes for the mile, and had success, and that was my sport. And it's been my sport for 5 decades. Now I'm 55, and I'm still competing. Anyways, what I'm talking about is I like this podcast because it's talking about, race strategy, and it's not always the fastest or the fittest who wins. And it got me to thinking that the way I came into the sport was different than a lot of you who came into the sport at an older age. You came into the sport to get in shape. You came into the sport because your neighbor ran a half marathon, or you read a book like Born to Run. And so you just jumped into the sport, and you kind of skipped a lot of steps that I think are important to succeed in the sport. So, if your first race was a half marathon or marathon, you just were out there trying to survive. And then later you tried to get faster. But if, started like I did through the system, where, I started off at the mile and then I moved up distances, but I learned how to run in those shorter events, saw what worked. Plus, in those shorter events, I used my competitors to push me, and I could learn strategy, I could learn pacing, kind of what they're talking about in this cycling podcast. And I think when you start later in life and you just jump into these epic events where just surviving them is monumental, you don't get to really learn how to be a runner. And you really learn how to run when you run against others. I think a lot of people kind of run against themselves, and and that's fine. But to this day, I'm 55, and if I put a bib on, I'm racing. Now, the people around me may not know I'm racing them, but I'm using them to push me so I'll go harder. And good gosh, when I train, I can barely break a 14-minute mile, but the other day I ran 11-minute miles for a 5K because I had my fellow competitors, fellow athletes, and I can push on them, and I can just use them to push myself, and also to help me learn how to pace, how to, deal with discomfort, how to deal with terrain, all these kind of things. It's like just doing experiments and learning what you can do and what you can't do, what you're weak at, what you're strong at. Also reveals your how your training's going or lack of training. So it's kind of like science versus faith. Faith is fine, but if you're doing shorter races, 10Ks, 5Ks, just local fun things, and you're out there not worrying about finishing, but just going out there and competing, getting the best out of yourself and using others, you learn valuable lessons that you can apply to a 6-day race. I ran a 5K the other day, but you know what? That will help me in my multi-day race because the same concepts apply in any race. Now, of course, if all your goal is to have fun and complete races, that's great and everything too, but most of the athletes we coach have big goals, and they want to, they do want to complete the race, but they also want to go faster and just have a better time out there. So I'm not a big fan of racing too much, but if you're a marathoner and beyond, jumping into some local 10K, 5Ks, shorter events, working on your strategy, working on competing, being a competitor will help you when you're out there and things get rough. Anyways, talk to you all and enjoy your weekend.